In life, not everything that glitters is gold. Sometimes, the things we envy the most can bring us the greatest pain. This is the story of two sisters, one patient and wise, the other jealous and impulsive. When Nkem set her eyes on her sister's wealthy fiancé, she thought she was stealing a better life for herself. But she did not know she was walking into a nightmare. What happens when greed leads to betrayal? And what happens when the truth comes too late? Let's begin. Long ago, in the small village of Ogita, surrounded by hills and rivers, there lived two sisters, Adana and Nkem. Though they were born of the same parents, they were as different as night and day. Adana, the elder sister, was calm, responsible, and wise. She always put her family first and carried herself with dignity. She was the kind of woman who thought before she spoke and never rushed into things. Nkem, on the other hand, was carefree and full of life. She loved attention and envied the good things others had. She never liked being second to Adana. Even as a child, if Adana got a gift, Nkem would demand something bigger. One day, a wealthy man named Obinna came into their lives. He was tall, handsome, and came from a respected family. His father was a great trader, and his mother, a proud woman, had only one wish: to see her son married and to hold a grandchild in her arms. Obinna set his eyes on Adana. He admired her quiet beauty and graceful nature. He asked for her hand in marriage, and Adana's parents were overjoyed. "We have suffered enough," her mother said, wiping her eyes. "This is the blessing we have been waiting for." Their father agreed. "This marriage will change our lives. Obinna is rich and respected. Our family will never know poverty again." But Adana did not share their excitement. Though Obinna was kind and generous, she noticed something that troubled her. At times, he was too controlling. He didn't like to be questioned. If she disagreed with him, he would raise his voice and his eyes would turn dark. One evening, after a small disagreement, he grabbed her wrist too tightly, causing her pain. He apologized afterward, showering her with gifts and sweet words, but Adana's heart was no longer at peace. "I need time," she told her parents. "I don't know why, but something in my spirit is not settled. I don't want to rush into this marriage." Her parents were disappointed. "Adana, do not speak like a foolish girl," her mother scolded. "Do you think a rich man will wait forever?" Her father added, "You are not getting any younger. This is your chance. Do not throw it away." Even Nkem shook her head, thinking her sister was being ungrateful. In her heart, jealousy burned like a hidden fire. Why should Adana be the one to marry such a rich and handsome man, she wondered. If she doesn't want him, maybe someone else does. And so, as Adana tried to delay the wedding, Nkem's heart began to wander where it should not. Nkem could not hide her feelings anymore. The more she watched Obinna, the more she wanted him for herself. At first, it was just small things: a lingering gaze, a soft laugh, a gentle touch on his arm whenever they spoke. She made sure to praise him at every chance, telling him how strong, smart, and powerful he was. Obinna noticed. Unlike Adana, who always questioned his ways, Nkem agreed with everything he said. She made him feel like a king. "You deserve a woman who truly appreciates you," she whispered one evening when they were alone. Obinna did not reply, but something in his eyes changed. He had always admired Adana, but Nkem made him feel different, more in control, more powerful. As the days passed, Nkem boldly pursued him. She found reasons to be around him, laughed at his jokes, and even dressed in ways that caught his attention. At first, Obinna fought the temptation, but Adana's delays frustrated him. He wanted a wife who would submit without question, and Nkem was proving to be exactly that. One evening, When the moon was high and the air was warm, Obinna gave in. That night changed everything. And after a month, Nkem became pregnant, and the news spread like wildfire. Obinna's mother was overjoyed. "This is a sign from the gods," she declared. "A woman who carries my son's child must be his wife." Without hesitation, she cancelled the engagement with Adana and demanded that Obinna marry Nkem instead. Adana felt her heart break into pieces. She tried to warn Nkem, to tell her that Obinna may not be the man he pretended to be. "Nkem, listen to me," she begged. "He is not as gentle as he seems. I have seen a side of him that you do not know." But Nkem refused to listen. "You are just jealous," she snapped. "You had your chance, and you wasted it. Now he is mine." Their parents sided with Nkem, eager to secure their family's future with Obinna's wealth. "You should be happy for your sister," their mother scolded Adana. "Nkem will bring honor to this family." Obinna's family paid a huge bride price, and within weeks, a grand wedding was held. Drums were beaten, wine was poured, and the village celebrated. But as Nkem danced in her fine clothes and gold jewelry, she did not know that she was dancing into a prison. For her nightmare was about to begin. Nkem thought she had won. She was now Obinna's wife, living in a grand house, wearing fine clothes, and eating the best food. She felt powerful, richer than she had ever been. But barely 2 weeks into the marriage, her dream turned into a nightmare. Obinna changed. The sweet words and gifts disappeared. His voice became harsh, his eyes cold. "You are my wife now," he said one evening. "You will do as I say." At first, it was small things. He told her what to wear, where to go, and who she could talk to. Then, he stopped her from visiting her family. "You belong to me now," he said. "Your past life is over." When she tried to argue, his hand landed on her face so fast that she barely saw it coming. Nkem stumbled back, shocked. "Obinna," she gasped, holding her cheek. "You hit me." He grabbed her by the arm. "And I will do worse if you ever question me again." The next time she spoke back, he beat her mercilessly. Even her pregnancy did not stop him. The news reached Nkem's parents. They were horrified. They went to Obinna's house, demanding to see their daughter. But Obinna refused. "If you want her back," he said, "then give me back my bride price." Nkem's parents fell silent. The bride price was a fortune, more money than they had ever seen in their lives, and had been used to pay off their debts and buy a small farmland to sustain the family. It was as though they had sold their daughter. And so, they turned away, unable to help her. Adana could not stand by and do nothing. She went to the king of the land, hoping he would help. "My sister is suffering," she told the elders. "Obinna beats her like an animal. He must be stopped." But there was no proof. Obinna was a respected man, and Nkem was kept hidden. The king's council dismissed her claims. "We cannot act without evidence," they said. "This is a family matter." As Adana defended her sister, someone was watching her from a distance, one of the king's sons. He was a young lawyer, dressed in simple but fine clothes, his eyes sharp and observant. When the meeting ended, he approached Adana outside the palace. "I have never seen someone fight so hard for another," he said. Adana sighed, her heart heavy. "She is my sister. What else can I do?" The prince smiled. "You have courage. And I admire that." Adana barely noticed his words. She was too worried about Nkem to think of anything else. Seeing her distress, the prince handed her a small business card. "If you ever need legal help," he said, "call me. But I prefer we go on a date first." Adana took the card, clutched in her fingers and walked away, leaving the prince standing there. Nkem sat in the corner of her room, her body sore from Obinna's latest beating. She no longer had the strength to cry. She had made a terrible mistake, but it was too late to turn back. Each day, her belly grew bigger, and with it, her fear. What if he killed her before the baby was born? Far away, Adana could not rest. She knew Nkem was suffering, and no one in the village was willing to help. One evening, she made a decision. "We are going to get my sister out of that house," she told her two closest friends, Chinya and Ifeoma. They waited until they were sure Obinna had left the mansion, then covered themselves in dark wrappers and made their way to Obinna's house. The compound was quiet, and the guards were asleep. "Now," Adana whispered. With careful steps, they sneaked into the house. Inside, they found Nkem sitting on the cold floor, her face swollen, her hands shaking. Adana ran to her. "We are taking you home," she whispered. But just as they helped Nkem to her feet, the front door slammed open. Obinna was back. His eyes burned with rage as he took in the sight of the women trying to take his wife away. "You think you can steal from me?" he roared. Before they could run, he grabbed them all and dragged them outside. He threw Adana and her friends onto the hard ground and locked the door, trapping Nkem inside. Then, like a madman, he began to beat Nkem again, his hands heavy, his anger uncontrollable. Just then, shouts filled the air. In the distance, police officers from the city had arrived. They were raiding a group of thieves trying to escape after a wild robbery. Adana's heart raced with an idea. She ran to the officers and dropped to her knees. "One of the criminals is inside that house," she cried. "He has locked himself in and is beating my pregnant sister." The officers hesitated for a moment. Then their leader gave the command. "Break the door down." With a loud crash, the officers stormed into the house. They found Obinna standing over Nkem, his hand still raised to strike. Before he could react, they grabbed him and threw him to the ground. His roars of anger turned to shock as they dragged him away, right alongside the real thieves they had come to catch. By the time the villagers gathered, it was too late for Obinna's family to stop the arrest. The next day, Obinna's powerful family tried to bribe the police. They offered money, land, and even gold, demanding his release. But Obinna was locked up with the armed robbers, and the officers refused to take chances. The robbers were under investigation for murder and other violent crimes, and Obinna was now caught in their web. Days later, his case was separated, but he was still facing trial for domestic violence. The man who once controlled everything was now powerless. And for the first time in months, Nkem was free. Obinna sat behind bars, his once proud face filled with shame and anger. He never imagined a day would come when he would be treated like a common criminal. But his wealthy parents refused to accept defeat. They hired the supposedly best lawyer to defend Obinna. "This is nothing but a misunderstanding," Obinna's mother told the lawyer. "My son must come home. Name your price." The lawyer smiled, confident that he could turn things around. Meanwhile, Adana, Nkem, and their family were helpless. They had no money to hire a lawyer. The case was going to trial, and if they lost, Obinna would walk free to return and torment Nkem again. One evening, as Adana sat thinking, she remembered the small business card tucked in her wrapper. She pulled it out and stared at the name. The prince. The lawyer. At first, she hesitated. But as she looked at Nkem, who sat beside her, weak and afraid, she knew she had no choice. She took a deep breath and went to find him in the city. The prince welcomed Adana into his mansion. "I knew you would come," he said with a kind smile. "Tell me everything." Adana explained the situation, her voice steady and strong. When she was done, the prince nodded. "I will help you," he said. "For free." Adana's eyes widened. "For free?" He smiled again. Justice should not be for only the rich. I will fight for your sister. For the first time in weeks, Adana felt hope. The trial day came. The courtroom was packed with people, eager to see how the case would end. Obinna's expensive lawyer stood tall, listing all the reasons why his client was innocent. But the prince was ready. He presented clear evidence, witnesses who had heard Nkem's cries, neighbors who had seen her bruises, and even the police report from the night of Obinna's arrest. Obinna's lawyer argued fiercely, but the truth was too strong. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was firm. Obinna is found guilty of domestic violence. He is sentenced to 1 year in prison or must pay a fine worth almost half of his family's wealth. A gasp spread through the courtroom. Obinna's parents turned pale. They had never imagined such a punishment. But their pride was too big to let their son stay in jail. They paid the fine. After the payment, Obinna's mother turned to Nkem's family. "We want our bride price back," she demanded. "We have lost enough already." Adana nodded proudly. "There's no problem since the marriage is already off." Adana then insisted that the prince accept to be paid for his services, but he bargained for a date instead and Adana reluctantly agreed. The trial was over. Obinna was defeated, his wealth reduced, his reputation destroyed. Nkem was free, but she did not smile. As they walked away from the courthouse, she suddenly stopped and covered her face with her hands. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and she began to shake. Adana and their parents turned to her, confused. "Nkem, what is it?" Adana asked, placing a hand on her shoulder. Nkem fell to her knees, sobbing. Then, between her cries, she whispered, "The child is not Obinna's." Their mother gasped. Their father stared in disbelief. Adana felt her stomach tighten. "What did you say?" their father asked, his voice low and heavy. Nkem wiped her tears, but the shame on her face was clear. "Before I seduced Obinna," she confessed, "I was already pregnant. I broke up with the real father to be with Obinna, but I later discovered the pregnancy after he had left for the city." Adana staggered back as if she had been hit. "So, all of this," she said slowly, "everything that happened, the marriage, the pain, was all built on a lie." Nkem nodded, ashamed. Their mother clutched her chest. "Nkem, what have you done?" Their father turned away, too angry to speak, and walked away. As Nkem sat on the ground, crying, Adana took a deep breath and looked at her sister. She felt anger, sadness, and pity all at once. But she also knew one thing for sure: this was the price of betrayal. And now, Nkem would have to live with the weight of her choices forever. Life is full of choices, and every choice comes with a consequence. Nkem's jealousy and greed led her into a life she thought was full of riches, but in the end, it only brought her pain and regret. Obinna, with all his wealth and power, believed he could treat people however he wanted, but in the end, he lost everything. Adana, though betrayed, remained honest and strong. She fought for what was right, and in the end, she was the only one who walked away with her dignity and peace. The lesson is simple. Do not envy what is not yours. You may not know what troubles hide behind the things you desire. Power and riches mean nothing if you have a wicked heart, because one day, they will be taken from you. A good name is better than gold, because while riches can fade, a pure heart and a strong mind will always find a way forward. Thank you for listening to this story. What lesson did you take from it? Let me know in the comments.